Section 2.3.14. The time series plot to the right shows the annual unemployment rate and the annual inflation rate over a period of 19 years. And we're going to complete parts A through F below. So if we look at the vertical axis, it is in percent. We can see that the horizontal axis is in the year. The line above here in blue is the unemployment, and the line below inflation is the one in red. So the first question that we want to ask ourselves is, estimate the unemployment rate in year 5. So we've already determined which is the x-axis and which is the y-axis. So we know that the years is the horizontal, and we know that the rates are the vertical axis. So we're going to review the graph of the unemployment, which is the one in blue, and then we're going to see along the vertical axis that corresponds to 5, so on the horizontal axis. So here is 5, and then we're going to go all the way up to here, to the unemployment line, where that dot is. And then we're going to move to the left, and we can see it's in between 6 and 8, which is 7. And that's a percent. So the unemployment rate in year 5 was approximately 7%. Next question says, in what year was the unemployment rate the highest? So we want to find out, where is it the highest? Well, we can see here it peaks probably around here. So let's take a look. Looks like it's about 16. So here's 16, and there is the highest. So find the point on the graph for unemployment with the greatest value on the vertical axis, then find the corresponding value on the horizontal axis, and we can see that the unemployment rate was highest in year 16. And what year was the inflation rate the highest? Well, again, we're going to find the fixed point. And so here we can see that at 13, here's the highest point. So the inflation rate was highest in year 13. In part D, it says, in what year were the unemployment rate and inflation rate the closest? And where was it the furthest? So the unemployment rate and inflation rate were closest where the points on the graphs for unemployment and inflation are the closest. So if we take a look at where they're the closest, these 2 points are where they're the closest, and it's in year 9. Similarly, the unemployment rate and inflation rate were furthest where the points on the graphs for unemployment and inflation are the furthest apart. So if we take a look at here in year 15, therefore that is the unemployment rate where it's the furthest. Now in part E, it says the misery index is defined as the sum of the unemployment rate and the inflation rate. And according to the misery index, which year was more miserable, year 17 or year 19? So to determine the misery index for each year, we're going to first estimate the unemployment and inflation rates for each year. And again, we're estimating. So in year 17, okay, we can see that the unemployment rate is around 7.4% for the unemployment rate. And then for the inflation rate, we can see that it was around 3.3%. When we add them together, we get 10.7%. Next, in year 19, we could estimate that the unemployment rate was around 5.9%. And we can see that the inflation rate was around 2.9%. So for year 19, we're going to add 5.9 and 2.9% to get 8.8%. So the misery index for year 17 was approximately 10.7%, and for year 19, approximately 8.8%. So year 17 was more miserable. In part F, we want to comment on the trend in the misery index between year 4 and 8. So we're going to use the method from part E to determine the misery index for each year in the range, and then compare the values. So in year 4, okay, we have the unemployment rate at around 6.6% and the inflation rate at around 2.6%. So we're calculating the misery index for year 4, which is going to give us 9.2% when we add them together. Now again, this is an estimate. Okay, next we got year 5. So for year 5, we can see that the unemployment rate is at 7% and the inflation rate is at 3.5. So when we add that together, that's going to give us 10.5%. Okay, and then in year 6, we can see that the unemployment rate is around 6.4 and the inflation rate is around 3.4. Adding that together gives us 9.8%. In year 7, we can see that the unemployment rate is around 5.6 and the inflation is at 3.1. Adding those together gives us 8.7%. And then in year 8, we can see that the unemployment rate is around 5.2% and 8.5%. Adding those together, 3.3%. Adding together gives us 8.5%. So note that when we look at the misery index, the misery index increases and then decreases from 4 to 8 to year 8. So it starts at 9.2% in year 4, and then it decreases to 8.5% in year 8.